Invincible comes back today, and if you've been a fan of the channel for a bit, you should know that every time Invincible comes back in one way, shape, or form, we kind of take a dump on Omni-Man. It's just a time where we come together and just, have a laugh and such. It's kind of like a holiday or something. So with Invincible coming back today, as previously mentioned, Omni-Man, it's time for your freaking annual beating. But who should I put him up against? Really, anyone's on the table. The last two guys I put him up against were regular show characters and Uncle Grandpa. So I think everything's fair game. So I thought to myself, what's relevant? LeGoat James, my glorious king. Where do I even begin? And as stupid as this sounds, I know that I can make this into a pretty entertaining video. And I guess God agrees with me because as I start making this video, the Lakers traded AD for Luka Doncic, which is insane. LeBron actually has help for the first time in almost half a decade. The landscape has gotten so crazy that I could be talking out my butt right now. It's Sunday, right? This video comes out on Friday. The trade deadline ends on Thursday. So as you're seeing this video, there's a good chance that LeBron might not even be on the team that's in this thumbnail. So both parties are relevant. I know that I can make this into a fun matchup, so why not? You only live once. So yes, unironically, I'm going to explain why LeGoat LeBron James would destroy Omni-Man. And I'm not going to be using some meme version of LeBron that the internet made up. I'm going to be using the official LeBron canon, which extends from real life, games, movies, comics. Everything's on the table today. So if you're interested in this matchup and other funny, dumb matchups like this, we do them every now and then. So if you want to see them, the best way is to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and I think we can hit it by the end of the year. On top of that, we always post multiple shorts throughout the week, and I also stream now, so.
And then we gotta go here. This is not bad so far. This is not bad so far, chat. Okay. What the? I'm about to break this game. I'm ready to start. What the?
You're gonna be getting a lot of content out of me, so considering it's free, at least think about it. But with that being said, let's explain why Omni-Man loses. And to do that, we're gonna have to cover Omni-Man first. I know you guys want to see LeBron scaling. Heck, I want to freaking talk about it. But you gotta eat your veggies before we can get to the dessert. So if we're gonna explain why LeBron would beat him, we're gonna have to explain what he's up against. I mean, I can stop the video at he came back 3-1 against the 73-9 freaking Warriors. And I think a decent chunk of y'all would accept that, but for the 2% who wouldn't, how strong is Omni-Man? Well, he's a character that I've talked about many times on the channel now. Like I said, it's a tradition to just beat him up. But just in case you're new here, I'm going to be covering his overall stats in a way that's comprehensive to the people who've never seen it before, and in an efficient manner so that if you have seen it, it should work as a way to refresh your memory. As a Viltrumite, Omni-Man's job is to pretty much destroy worlds, which is a notion pretty consistently showcased, especially during, his raid on the Flaxen home planet, where just by him flying real fast, he's able to generate humongous dust clouds that were potent enough to span entire continents, which would get him into the multi-continental ranges of attack potency. These ranges are consistent as he remarks to Mark that he was able to throw a meteor the size of Texas back into outer space. And once you take into account that, Texas is a state that's bigger than some countries, for him to be able to throw it back into space, especially in the manner that, he shows Mark how to throw meteors, that means that he would be able to exert energy relative to what would be required to destroy moons. But really the best scaling chain for Invincible that's consistent is that due to Nolan's status as a very highly regarded, member of the Viltrumite Empire, he would upscale about like 90% of the members of his race. Obviously there's some exceptions like Thrag, but most Invincible characters, he upscales for the most part. This notion is really telling because Thrag, the emperor of the remaining Viltrumites, states that collectively they could tear the earth apart, assuming that they would tear it at a convenient speed, especially in the way that he implies that they would. And that would mean that at bare minimum, each of these no-name Viltrumites would be capable of exerting force relative to what would be required to destroy a small planet at a low end, with higher values that get all the way up to large planetary, depending on how generous you are with the speed of the motion. I think small planet is kind of where it caps personally, but I'm going to let you guys argue planetary, large planetary. The calc should have been on screen, so do what you want with that. You could try to attempt that these latter ends are consistent for Omni-Man, as with the help of Mark and another older Viltrumite, he was able to destroy the core of the planet Viltrum. Though there's a lot of context behind this feat, you could try to be disingenuous and assert that the core of the planet is stronger than some stars due to it still being intact after, it was shot by a gun that is able to blow up stars. Normally I would jive with this chain of scaling, but a lot of the narrative implies that if this gun wasn't shot prior, these guys would literally die trying to hit the same thing. To me personally, the story is implying that the version of the core that was, hit by these guys was extremely weakened after being struck by a construct whose, bullets could destroy stars. So, even though they did blow up the core of the planet Viltrum, they only destroyed a pretty weakened chunk after the fact. It's like if you chop down a tree and leave it at 1% type, and you just push it over. Are you stronger than the axe that left the tree at 1%? Especially when, the Viltrumites are consistently shown to be sweating this same gun. But once again, I'll leave that scaling chain up to you. But as for myself, I know that Omni-Man is consistently anywhere between moon level to like planetary at best. But, dwarf star level exists if you kind of squint your eye at it or just ignore it. But with stats such as attack potency out of the way, we can move on to his other attributes, such as his super fast speed. We know at a low end he can, overpower the gravitational pull of black holes, meaning that at a low end he's faster than the speed of light. But perhaps his most blatant example of speed is when he was shown to be able to travel from the planet Earth to Thraxa in the span of a couple of months or weeks, depending on which version of the story you're using. Seeing as how this planet is alluded to being in a different galaxy in pretty much both variants of the story, and that would mean that Omni-Man will possess travel speed massively faster than the speed of light. And seeing as how Omni-Man was just doping around and had no real idea of where he was going, this would still be a low end for his speed. As for his hacks, it's nothing too notable. He can fly and, he has the Superman stick. I don't think he has laser eyes though, or freezing breath. I remember I said to someone one time, right? Why didn't Omni-Man use his laser eyes? And he just looked at me like he doesn't have laser eyes. This is before I watched the show, but I just assumed that since he was a Superman-esque character, he had all the moves, Even Homelander got the laser eyes, but I think Omni-Man is just a Saiyan with a cape. So yeah, that should about do it for Nolan, so let's talk about the GOAT. So some of you guys might be confused, what exactly is a composite LeBron James? Well, some people might be thinking that I'm going to pull from memes, which I already said I'm not going to do. Basically, a composite LeBron James in my eyes is, you have to remember, LeBron James is a celebrity, and because of that, he's made cameos or just been prominently featured in tons of different forms of media. And we're going to be taking a look at some of his stuff to see where he would scale. Keep in mind, this is inherently a lowball, as I don't go over every single piece of media that LeBron has ever been in, so just keep that in mind. Firstly, let's talk about LeBron's Looney Tunes scaling, as he scales to the Looney Tunes because of Space Jam 2. The subject of canon of, the IP is a bit confusing, due to the Looney Tunes just being in everything, and a lot of these projects having loose to no continuity between each other. Trying to find a linear way to scale these guys can be a tad confusing. But due to these versions of the tunes being the representations of the IP straight from WB themselves in the serververse, they seem to just be inherently comp versions of the characters. They're literally the versions that we've seen across all of WB media. This isn't a special case like in Looney Tunes Back in Action where they're actors, and it's not even like the original Space Jam where they're betrayed to live underground. They're just straight from WB Studios themselves. But going back to Space Jam to provide an example, this movie is not canon to the OG film, as that's just a movie in this universe. But despite that, they allude to experiencing the movie's events like multiple times. There's also the fact that on the Toon's planet, there are countless references to the classic cartoon run, with some of the shots being shown to be like pictures or photographs on the walls, all alluding to the fact that these are comp versions of the characters. Meaning that LeBron James, via being shown to be on par with them in terms of speed and AP, as he can play physical sports with them, would in conclusion mean that he scales to pretty much every single Looney Tunes feat prior to the release of this movie. to save some time, I'm just gonna go over some feats that these characters have shown, and just try to keep in mind LeBron would scale to these guys both physically and in terms of speed. Bugs Bunny can survive blasting a huge chunk of the moon and surviving the epicenter of said explosion as well, with the blast being so, potent and violent that it actually gets into the large planetary ranges. Daffy Duck is also a character who can survive an entire planet getting vaporized even more violently point blank. And in terms of speed, Bugs Bunny is a character who can travel from the past to the future just by burrowing. And LeBron is shown to be on par with Bugs while he's burrowing, meaning that LeBron James has speed that breaks the linear speed formula. But yeah, remember how Omni-Man needed 2 guys and a blaster he considered indestructible just to barely replicate this feat? Well, if we were to use LeBron's official Looney Tunes scaling, LeBron would be able to casually output this level of energy at a low end. But we can keep going even further as LeBron scales to WWE. Some of you guys might be like, what do you mean WWE? Aren't those guys just like athlete level? Well, something to consider is that WWE, despite being a live show, is a fictional verse with fictional characters. Think of it kind of like those ancient Greek stage plays where, despite them being there live, they're telling a story. Alright, awesome, cool, you might ask. How does LeBron scale? Well, despite the stories of WWE being fictional, many IRL events are canon to the events of the series.
We have caught and compromised to a permanent end Osama bin Laden.
This includes the career of LeBron James. But just because he's canon doesn't mean he scales to anything. Well, that's where you'd be wrong, as a retired Shaquille O'Neal scales to these superstars, as during the events of WrestleMania 32, Shaq was shown to be physically on par with the Big Show. And during the events of this match, the two would get bum rushed by dozens of superstars, including Goldust. See, there he is. You might be like, what's so important about Goldust? Well, he's a character who scales to his brother Stardust, who is a 5th dimensional being unironically. And Shaq and Big Show just casually throw these guys off of them, meaning that Big Show and Shaquille O'Neal can exert force relative to what would be required to press 5th dimensional beings. This comes back to LeBron, as he was a former teammate of Shaq, meaning that he also has 5th dimensional scaling. I know this dimension talk may be a little bit confusing to some of y'all, but do you remember the movie Interstellar? Well, if you don't, this was a movie heavily overseen by theoretical physicists to ensure that its concepts would be consistent with actual scientific concepts. And here's what the main character says about 5th dimensional beings.
Every moment is infinitely complex. They have access to infinite time and space, but they're not bound by anything.
LeBron, with his WWE scaling, would unironically scale to beings of that magnitude with this scaling chain alone. And I know what you're thinking, yeah, it's likely that he physically scales to the people we've talked about, anyone from Bugs Bunny to John Cena, but this is only via being able to play basketball games with the characters I've scaled. And while yes, basketball is a very physical sport demanding a tight balance of strength and conditioning, it's never ever going to be as concrete to establishing relativity to such forces as a fight. And for those of you guys thinking this, don't worry, as I saved the best and most blatant scaling chain for LeBron for last. Multiversus is a now dying Warner Brothers attempt at creating a Smash Bros-like clone, and it features tons of different IPs, everyone from DC Comics, Cartoon Network, and also various cinematic icons. Oh, and LeBron James is here. And seeing as how it's a fighting game, he's literally swapping paws with some of the most iconic characters in fiction. And off rep, he's unironically stated by the official YouTube channel to be the GOAT. Considering he's sitting right next to characters like Superman, Rick Sanchez, and even Ultra Instinct Shaggy, this sentiment alone gives us some crazy scaling potential, especially considering how the official DC Comics website implies that the game is canon to the DC universe. So unironically, LeBron James is boxing with comic book Superman, the guy who can sneeze like planets, solar systems, and drag galaxies. I'm not even gonna dive into the full semantics of scaling to a comic book Superman. A lot of his higher ends rely on like higher dimensional concepts and stuff of the sort. And even if I did, some of y'all wouldn't even understand how strong it is. So I'm just gonna say, this is the same guy who beat Goku 3 times in a row on Death Battle. And that will give you a pretty good idea of how powerful this version of LeBron James would be. This game also confirms that the version of Bugs Bunny is in fact the canon one, as his bio specifically points out all the many pieces of media and even crossovers he's been in. And just to bring everything full circle, this bio also confirms that the events of Space Jam 2 are canon to this version of LeBron, with his bio also saying that he utilizes his skills to defend the worlds of DC Comics, Looney Tunes, Adventure Time, and all the other universes, shown in this IP. So to wrap it all up, composite LeBron James at a low end with scaled characters who can no-sell planet bust, and he's physically superior to his retired teammates who can box with fifth dimensional forces. And at best, he's literally a multiversal protector whose power is officially acknowledged to be the greatest of all time amongst some of the most powerful and iconic characters in all of fiction. And the craziest part is that this isn't even all of it, as he has a Marvel and DC Comics run that I couldn't talk about. So yeah, you better believe he beats Omni-Man, as this is a guy who was universally agreed to be a Superman victim. The same Superman who might be a LeBron victim if you give him some of these scaling chains. He's fast enough to physically move on par with characters who can move, back and forwards through time. He's strong enough to dunk on Superman and potentially even destroy planets. And he's such a good leader that he can lead Taz, who's a being with a mind so out there that it's even stumped a variant of the smartest man in the multiverse. Oh, and did I mention he came back 3-1 against the 73-9 Warriors? Truly, is there anything LeBron can't do? And I want to point out that I got these scaling chains through official means. I didn't make up stuff or scale memes or something. This is official LeBron canon. So with that being said, that was the video. What'd you guys think? I thought it was pretty funny. Do you want to see more stupid matchups like this? Hey, I don't mind doing them. They're pretty fun. So yeah, I'm going to stream in a couple hours from now. So if you're a real one, be sure to tap into the stream. Tell me if you like the video there. We can have discussions there live. I'm playing some probably Playtime Chapter 3. And it should be a fun time. But if you're not into that, that's fine. Because I'll see you guys anyways at the end of the next week. But until then, stay big, G fans.